I've got several examples in the book that do this as well. The basic technique also is what you would do, say, to move a setting screen or something on screen. But the idea is you would, let me just put some stuff on screen. There's a rectangle with, let's put some text in it. Let's change the color so we can see it. And then I'm going to make a display group. I'm going to call it screen1. And then I'm going to add the stuff to it. Add to display group. Add to display group. And if you're going to do stuff like, sliding it around, you might think about where you start the display group out. Like we talked about the other time with, the X and Y values for display groups are slightly different. So it depends on the technique you want, but you just need to be aware that the X and Y, if you change X and Y values, the display group is relative to where it is at the center of the screen, not the 0, 0 at the top left corner of the screen. So I'm going to also just make that not visible. And then I'm going to hit the hide button up in the toolbar. The hide button will hide stuff. Oh, I did the wrong thing. I'm so sorry. I changed high accidentally to not visible. I don't want to do that. In general, using the display group approach, you want to have everything in the display group visible, and then you take the display group and make it say not visible. And then you can hide it. You should see it just disappear. So it's still in Drawn2Code, but now we can call it to visible using a set attribute. But let's create a second, just real quick, let's create a second screen. So same kind of thing, except I'll say, how about by? And I'm going to make a second display group called screen2. And then I'm going to add the rectangle and the by to the display group 2, screen 2. And then I'll do the same thing. I will make it not visible. And now it might look weird because you have a stack with lots of stuff in it, but there's nothing on screen, so everything is not visible. And then we can make screen 1 visible again. I made it not visible so that I could add the screen 2 components without also having the screen 1 components on screen. There was no other reason to hide it, really. So now what we've got is an app that when it loads, you'll see the box and the word hi. And you can transition to the next screen just by making this display object not visible and the other display object visible. You could use a transition to change the alphas. You could also use a transition to like slide screen 1 to the left and screen 2 over, to take up its place, or kind of anything that strikes your fancy. But just to get it working for this, we could add, let's say, the tap listener to the 2 display groups. So I'm going to select each display group and just add listener tap. Let me zoom into the stack so you can see it better too. Okay, so if we run this, it's not gonna do a ton. It should just say hi. There we go. And when I tap it, it's just gonna report the information on the screen about the tap. So one interesting thing to note is that it tells me I tapped on screen 1, which I did. But you and I know screen 2 is right on top of it. It's just not visible. It's in the same location. So I mean, I had to have also tapped on screen 2, but objects that aren't visible can't be tapped on, essentially. So if you hide something and want it to be tappable, you've got to either create something else that's visible or make it, alpha value of 0.01 or something so that you can't see it, but it can be tapped on. But if it's not visible, you can't tap on it, which is why we're not seeing 2 taps here. But let's just change. I mean, so that what you wanted to do though was switch between these 2 screens. So inside of the first tap handler, we've got a snippet. And so you could just type it in there. You could use set attribute objects if you like. All you want to do is say something like screen1.isVisible equals false, and screen2.isVisible equals true. As long as I'm using Corona syntax, Lua syntax, not Java syntax, that should work. Yeah, is visible is what we want. Okay, so with that change, we should be able to tap on the high and have it disappear and be replaced by by. If you wanted to switch back, obviously you could do the same bit of code, but reverse it and put it, in the other screen tap handler.
I just grab that same code.
Yeah, but you're switching. You're making screen 2 visible and screen 1 not visible.
So that would change it from true to false,
Right.
to true.
Yeah.
It works now.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it is pretty easy. The idea is you use display groups, group everything on each screen, name them something that makes sense. Screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, whatever, or whatever makes sense to you, and then you just use. You can use isVisible to switch between which is on screen. When you have lots of screens, you can also manage the display groups using the groups button to toggle between what's visible. So you can double click really quickly, and it'll make one or the other or both visible.
Okay.
That way you don't have 5 screens stacked on top of each other, all visible at the same time here.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Questions?
If you were to add a transition, like the fade in,
right,
or something, or even kind of in the very beginning, would it be best, like when you have the welcome screen, would that be just like timed for 2 seconds or something, like welcome and fade?
Yeah, so let me think. You would want, conceptually what you're saying is easy to do. It's just a transition. There are little complexities though, like for instance the fact that you can't tap on something that isn't visible. Also, what tends to throw people is just kind of the difference between is visible and alpha. So is visible is just a switch in Corona that says put this on screen or don't put it on screen. It doesn't have anything to do with the color, the alpha, or anything. The other way you can make stuff disappear is by setting its alpha to 0. And then making it appear by setting it to 1 and transitioning it. It's in Drawn2Code, the way I recommend doing it is still using is visible, so that this is visible, and then if you want to do a transition, you'd change the display groups. There we go. It's alpha to 0.
Okay.
And then you'd create a transition. And select that display group. And in the transition, move the alpha back to 1, hit that checkbox. We could make it a little more dramatic, but that should get us, whoa. Oh. That should get us, once it loads, should get us the high screen fading in
Mm-hmm.
dramatically. Yours may be working quicker than mine. There you go. So, does that make sense?
Yes, that worked perfectly.
Excellent.